All right, Zay, I'm going to try and give some folks here a little history lesson on why the hatred for between Arkansas and Texas really from Arkansas. So, and Sarkisian kind of joked about it on Monday. He said, I don't know what Darrell Royal did to Arkansas, but they absolutely hate our guts. Okay, so now we're going back. We're going back to 1960. You got Darrell Royal and Frank Broyles. Frank Broyles was one of my absolute favorite college football announcers because he's from the state of Georgia, and it talked like this, and he would do games with Keith Jackson, and he'd say, Keith, that offensive line is not getting any push. And I just loved his accent. But anyway, Frank Broyles, the head coach at Arkansas. Darrell Royals, head coach at Texas. And their battles from 60 to 69 were epic. They were the teams determining who was winning the national championship. And Texas won it in 63. And these games are all, crazy close. Like in 63, you got it's 17-13. Texas wins in Arkansas. In 64, Darrell Royal thinks he's got one of his best teams ever. And Arkansas comes to Austin and wins 14-13. Darrell Royal told me that loss haunted him because he decided to go for it on a 2-point conversion. And Frank Broyles blitzed on the play, and it got home, and the quarterback rushed the throw, fell incomplete. Texas loses 14-13. Darrell Royal can't get over it. Then Arkansas wins the national championship in 64. 65, 66, 67 are kind of Darrell Royal's lean years. And in 68, after tying Houston and losing to Texas Tech. So now Texas is 0-1-1 to start the season is when Darrell Royal's offensive coordinator, Emory Bellard, comes up with the Wishbone. And Texas wins 30 games in a row, including the 69 national championship. But this is how good Texas and Arkansas were. Going into that 69 season, the TV, ABC, said, let's move the game from its usual place in October to December 6th because we think it's going to have national championship implications. They couldn't have been more right. It was number 1 Texas against number 2 Arkansas. They're playing in Arkansas, and Arkansas is dealing. They're up 14-0. It's the fourth quarter. Texas can't move the ball. And all of a sudden, James Street gets loose for a 42-yard touchdown run. So, and they go for 2, and they get it. Now they're down 14-8. And there's 6 minutes left. And Texas has 4th and 3 from their own 43. And Darrell Royal calls timeout, and he's trying to think of a play that Frank Broyles will not anticipate. So they call 53 veer pass, which is a go route for the tight end, guy named Randy Peschel. And they're thinking that, we'll run some routes that'll distract everybody and the tight end will just come free. No. First of all, Royal calls the play and James Street says, over on the sideline, he's like, what? And Royal's like, 53 veer pass. And he said, Coach, you sure you want to? He said, hell yes, I'm sure.
Yeah, just challenge DKR. What are we doing?
Well, that's 4th and 3. We're throwing a go route. So Street goes back to the huddle. He says, okay, y'all aren't going to believe this, but 53 veer pass. And sure enough, they send Peschel out on the route. He's double covered, but Street throws it. And Darrell Royal would say later there were 6 hands in the air and 4 of them belonged to Arkansas. And that ball came down, and Randy Peschel caught it. One of the greatest plays in Texas football history. Sets Texas up at the 13. 2 plays later, they score. Jim Bertelsen, great Wishbone running back. And Happy Feller kicks the extra point. Texas is up 15-14. And that's how it ends. Richard Nixon had been there. And he crowned Texas the national champion even before the bowl games. A lot of people were pissed about that. But Texas won the bowl game against Notre Dame, solidifying, the 69 national championship. And that's why the hatred. But here's the crazy thing. Darrell Royal and Frank Broyles were best friends. No one knew it. But in the offseason, they would vacation together. They're both like 7-8 handicaps in golf. Frank Broyles once joked, we're not scratch golfers, but our wives are scratch shoppers. And they would vacation together. And so Frank Broyles calls Darrell Royal before the 76 season. He says, hey, keep this under your hat, but this is going to be my last season. And Darrell Royal said, it's going to be mine too. And they kept it under their hat, and they played the final game of the regular season in Austin. And they leaned in, and Darrell Royal said, I love you. And a reporter heard it and was like, did you just tell him you love him? And Darrell Royal was like, maybe. And then he walked off and said, yeah. And then he announced he was retiring. And part of it was, and this is crazy to me, this is still crazy to me, and it haunted Darrell Royal. So Darrell went to OU. He's still the all-time career interceptions leader at OU. He had 18 interceptions in his time.
Damn, they didn't even throw back then.
18. And he was good friends with a guy named Chuck Fairbanks, who was the coach at OU in the early 70s. And Chuck Fairbanks was not doing well. And so Darrell told Emory Bellard, hey, teach them the wishbone. And Emory Bellard was like, what? Teach Oklahoma the wishbone? He's like, yeah, Chuck's having a tough time, and he's a good guy. Well, guess who Chuck Fairbanks' offensive coordinator was? Barry Switzer. So there's Emory Bellard teaching the wishbone to Barry Switzer, one of the best recruiters of all time. Once Barry Switzer had the secret formula, and he started recruiting all the black players out of Texas, because Barry's a bootlegger's boy who grew up in the hood. And he could talk to mama, baby. Now, Eric Dickerson's mom, when he showed up with that full-length mink, was like, you will never play for that man because he is the devil. And Dickerson was like, oh, shoot, man. I wanted to play for Barry Switzer. But so Switzer famously said, Texas invented the wishbone. OU perfected it. And OU would go on to win, 4 national championships under Switzer. And it bothered Royal. He thought Barry was spying on him, which he was. And he just was like, it haunted him because Switzer took over for Fairbanks. And suddenly OU was running the wishbone better than anybody. And everybody remembers Jamel Holloway and Charles Thompson and Billy Sims. And so they walked out together. Royal was 52. Frank Broyles was 51. Darrell was the athletic director at the time at Texas. He was both the football coach and the athletic director, and he wanted to name his defensive coordinator, Mike Campbell, the head coach, and the Board of Regents, which at that time had Frank Irwin on it, and Alan Shivers, the former governor of the state of Texas. They were like, no, no, you're quitting on us. So you're not going to name the new football coach. And they went and hired Fred Akers, and they told Fred to park in Darrell Royals' parking spot.
Oh, so disrespectful.
And it created a divide in the program that was not healed until Mac Brown was hired. And Fred Akers played for a national championship in 77. The very next year, he had Earl Campbell. Earl won the Heisman that year. Texas went undefeated. They lost to Notre Dame badly in the Cotton Bowl. And then in 83, they went undefeated. And then they lost to Georgia 10-9. And the first losing season Fred Akers had, he won 74% of his games. First losing season he had, he got fired.
Yeah.
Because the Royal loyalists were like, we need a Royal guy in here. And they hired David McWilliams, who had one good season at Texas Tech, but he played for Darrell on the 63 national championship team. But David, God bless him, super smart coach, but not organized. So he has up and down, really more down than up. But he had that 90 shock the world team with Brian Jones, and they went to the Cotton Bowl and got smoked by Miami. And then his next losing season in 91, he got fired, and they brought in John Mackovic because John Mackovic was super organized and buttoned up, but he didn't fit. Like Willie, they always joked, you're not letting John Mackovic on Willie Nelson's bus because that dude's a wine drinker. He's not a beer drinker. And Mackovic, high highs, low lows, won the 96 Big 12 championship. Unbelievable. Great win over Nebraska. James Brown, roll left.
Roll left, baby.
Roll left. And then, he gets let go after 97 in Route 66. In comes Mac Brown. Mac united the program. He brought Darrell Royal front and center. They developed a father-son type deal. But those Arkansas, it got passed on from old heads to the youngins. Texas, when they come around, we take their heads off, and it's still there. And it was funny. Sam Pittman was asked this week in his play. He said, "Do you think your players understand the rivalry?" He said, "No, but they'll feel it. They'll feel it in the stadium Saturday." And that's what everyone said about the 2021 game. Even the Texas players who were there, guys like David Benda, Jake Majors, they were like, you could feel the hatred. They were saying everything to us that you normally only hear in the OU end of the Cotton Bowl. And he's like, it's real. So the fans will pass it down from generation to generation. And there's always been a thing for Arkansas. They have Texarkana, the city that's half Texas, half Arkansas. If you're from Texarkana, everyone wants to know which high school did you go to? Did you go to the high school on the Texas side or on the Arkansas side? And it's a little brother thing, but it's real. And it goes back to that time. From 60 to 69, Texas went 6-4, and 4 of those games impacted the national championship. So it's like, the great decade between Bo and Woody, Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama, Bear Bryant, Nick Saban. Those were the 2 guys who were running college football that decade. And that's what this all goes back to.
What year was Jerry Jones on the squad?
64. He was on that national championship team.
Okay.
With Jimmy Johnson.
Jimmy Johnson. Yeah, that's were they hating on each other back then? What happened? This is the homie. We broke.
That's where their bond. That's where their bond formed. But Jimmy always looked at Jerry. Jerry was a guard. Jimmy Jimmy was like, I'm the football guy. And Jimmy became a coach and he won in places like Oklahoma State. And Jimmy won wherever he went. And he's a Port Arthur guy. He's a, rough and tumble guy. He was high school classmates with Janis Joplin. But then Jimmy goes to Miami, puts one of the best staffs ever together. And Jimmy and Jerry bought the Cowboys with Jimmy Johnson in mind. Like, he can never forget that. That's why I was so pissed at Jerry for waiting so long to put Jimmy into the Cowboys Ring of Honor. Jerry risked everything. He leveraged everything to buy the Cowboys for $140 million. He got the stadium too, which now is like, my God, it's the biggest bargain of all time. But for Jerry at the time, it was every loan, everything he could do to leverage for that. But he did it because he knew he was going to hire Jimmy Johnson as the coach, and he trusted Jimmy, and it worked. And it went back to their time together on that Arkansas 64 team. And Barry Switzer was an assistant coach on that 64 Arkansas team. Young assistant, almost, the same age as the players. And so you feel it. Like I said, if you're listening to this right now and you're going to the game, make sure you walk on the football stadium side of that main drag and not the side with all the fraternity houses, because they will wear you out. They'll get in your face. It's not going to be oh, hey, good to have you here. It's going to be we're going to run your asses out of here. And we'll see if the Hogs can put together a complete game, because the energy, even at 11, they'll feel it.
Yeah, and they can't wait to play spoiler. You talk about Texarkana, Landon Jackson. That's where he's from. His brother's coming to Texas next year. Like, Lance is a good player. Lance Jackson, Texarkana. One went to Arkansas. The other one's going to Texas. Go figure. And you brought up Janis Joplin, saying that she went to high school with Jimmy Johnson. I think Bucky Gobble and Janis had a little thing back in the day.
No, Carly Simon.
I swear. Carly Simon. Okay. I knew it was one of them old singers. Okay. Appreciate you correcting me on that. Yeah. I was like, man, did that the girl that the little, situation, something.
Carly Simon was a hottie back in the day.
Oh, yeah. Buck got around. Tupac wasn't the only one getting around. Bucky Gobble.
Right. Bucky
Gobble got around. You know what I'm saying? No, that's amazing story, Chip. Great chip shot. I agree with Jack. If we could break that down, chip shot, to put it out on YouTube where people could hear it, because that needs to be heard, not just here on Chip and Zay, but everywhere. Like, that's amazing backstory. Like, I knew a lot of that, but not as much as you broke it down. Like, yeah, this rivalry. And I get Texas with Oklahoma and A&M looking at Arkansas as, because there's just been so many rivalries, or try to be rivalries. Like, Baylor tried to make Texas a rivalry. Tech tried to make Texas a rivalry, which I get it, but, Texas just gets hated on. So it's more just who Texas takes seriously, and it's the Sooners and the Aggies. And since it goes back so long in the 60s, and just that separation from Arkansas being an SEC and the Horns being in the Big 12, I'm glad that it's being rekindled. Even though it scares the crap out of me to go to Fayetteville on Saturday, because it's going to be crazy, and I hope this team's prepared for that. I'm glad this game's back. Like, college football, they deserve to see this game. The nation deserves to see it. And yeah, we should get a good one. Hopefully it's a blowout, but I feel like it's going to be a good game on Saturday, and that's what I fear most about it. Arkansas being in the game and thinking they have life, playing with nothing to lose.
Yeah.